Something very significant happened on December 1st, 2025, that almost every person in this country completely missed. While the headlines were filled with political noise and holiday distractions, the Federal Reserve quietly made a decision that will reshape the value of your hard-earned money for the rest of this decade. They officially ended what they call quantitative tightening. Now, I know that sounds like a dry, bureaucratic term that has nothing to do with your daily life. But the reality is the exact opposite. This single move marks the beginning of a massive shift in how the system works. And if you are not prepared, it will erode your purchasing power faster than anything we have seen in recent history. Your savings account, your retirement nest egg, and the price of every gallon of milk you buy are all caught in the crosshairs of this decision. The wild part is that this is not a new playbook, but it is being executed with a level of stealth that we have never seen before. Back in 2020, they pulled a similar move, and those who did not understand the game were left behind, while the largest wealth transfer in American history took place right before their eyes. Today, in early 2026, it is happening all over again, and the window to protect yourself is closing faster than you think. In this discussion, I'm going to peel back the curtain on exactly what the Federal Reserve just did, why they are hiding the true motives behind technical jargon, and most importantly, what you need to do right now to ensure you are on the right side of this wealth gap. Because the system is not designed to protect your savings, it is designed to protect itself. Before we dive into the deep mechanics of this secret money printing, I want to ask you a favor. If you value these deep dives into the truth that the mainstream media ignores, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. It helps us reach more people who are trying to protect their families just like you are. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you feel like your money is buying less today than it was just 6 months ago? Let us start a conversation down there, because your perspective matters more than ever in this changing economy. To understand where we are going, you first have to understand the basic game being played with your currency. Think of the entire American economy like a giant bathtub. The Federal Reserve is the person standing at the faucet, and they control exactly how much water flows into that tub. When the economy looks shaky, or when the big banks are in trouble, they turn the faucet on full blast. Money pours into the system, interest rates drop, and suddenly it is very cheap for corporations and wealthy individuals to borrow money. This causes the stock market to go up and house prices to skyrocket. Everyone feels richer on paper, but there is a catch. If you leave that faucet running for too long, the bathtub starts to overflow, and that overflow is what we call inflation. It is the reason your groceries cost twice as much as they did 5 years ago. It is the reason your property taxes are climbing and your insurance premiums are out of control. When the tub starts to overflow, the Federal Reserve tells you they are going to fix it by draining the water. This is what they have been doing for the last 3 years under the name of quantitative tightening. They stopped adding new money and started effectively deleting money from the system to bring inflation back down. But on December 1st, 2025, they announced that the draining process is officially over. The official reason they gave was that inflation has cooled down to their target of around 2.4%. They want you to believe that the mission is accomplished and that we are returning to a stable, healthy economy. But there are 2 major reasons they are not telling you why they actually stopped. First, the banking system was running dangerously low on cash reserves. Imagine walking into your local bank to withdraw your money, and they tell you that they simply do not have enough on hand. That is the nightmare scenario the Federal Reserve is desperate to avoid at all costs. Second, the job market has been softening significantly as we entered 2026. Unemployment is creeping up, and major corporations are quietly freezing their hiring processes. The Federal Reserve knows that if they keep the money supply tight, the economy will tip into a severe recession that they cannot control. So they backed off. But here is the part that should keep you awake at night. Just 10 days after they stopped draining the tub, they opened a new secret faucet. On December 11th, they announced something called reserve management purchases. To the average person, that sounds like a boring accounting procedure. But in plain English, it means they are starting to buy short-term Treasury bills again. And how do they buy those bills? They create brand new money out of thin air to do it. The Federal Reserve is very careful to tell the public that this is not money printing. And it is definitely not quantitative easing. It is like someone telling you they are not eating dessert while they are sitting there with a giant piece of chocolate cake in their hand. They can call it whatever they want, but the effect on your wallet is exactly the same. New money enters the financial system, it expands their balance sheet, and it begins to devalue every dollar you currently have in your pocket. This is a silent tax that you never voted for and you never agreed to pay. Let us look at the history to see why this matters so much for your future. In early 2020, the Federal Reserve owned about $4.2 trillion in assets. Within just 2 years, they ballooned that number to $9 trillion. They printed nearly $5 trillion and injected it directly into the veins of the financial system. The goal was to prevent a total collapse. And on the surface, it worked for a while. The stock market recovered faster than anyone expected, and housing prices shot up to record highs. But the benefits were not shared equally by the people working hard on Main Street. If you owned a portfolio of stocks or a piece of real estate, your net worth exploded during that time. But if you were a regular worker, saving your cash in a bank account and trying to do the right thing, you got absolutely crushed. Think about the math of that period. House prices increased by over 30% in some areas in just 2 years. The S&P 500 index jumped significantly. But at the same time, real average weekly earnings for the typical worker actually fell when you adjusted for the cost of living. You were making the same number of dollars, but those dollars were buying significantly less food, less fuel, and less housing. This created what economists call a K-shaped recovery. The wealthy people on the top line of the K saw their wealth move up toward the sky. Everyone else on the bottom line saw their standard of living move down toward the floor. This was not an accident. It is exactly how the system is designed to function during a period of monetary expansion. The Federal Reserve knows that when they pump money into the economy, asset prices move first and wages move last. By the time your boss gives you a small raise to keep up with the cost of living, the price of the house you wanted to buy has already moved another $50,000 out of your reach. The system prioritizes the stability of the big banks and the financial markets over the financial health of the average family. And now, as we move deeper into 2026, they are priming the pump for the next wave of this transfer. The current situation is even more precarious because of the political pressure being placed on the central bank. Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, has his term ending in May of 2026. In the political world of Washington, there's an intense desire for lower interest rates to make the economy look as good as possible on paper. There is a push to appoint a new leader who will be even more aggressive about cutting rates and pumping money into the system. Low rates make the stock market go up, which politicians love to use as a scoreboard for their success. But low rates also fuel the fire of inflation, which hurts the very people those politicians claim to represent. If the Federal Reserve yields to this pressure and starts cutting rates aggressively while also buying Treasury bills through their new program, we are going to see a massive resurgence of inflation. It might not hit 9% immediately, like it did a few years ago, but even 4 or 5% inflation is a death sentence for your savings. Let us look at a practical example of how this affects you right now. Suppose you have $50,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account today. Your bank might be paying you around 3% interest. That feels like you are making progress because you are earning about $1,500 a year in interest. But if the real inflation rate for the things you actually need, like insurance, groceries, and healthcare, is running at 5%, you are actually losing money. Your $50,000 is growing by $1,500, but it is losing $2,500 in purchasing power. Every single year, you are getting $1,000 poorer in real terms, even though the number in your bank account is going up. You are running as fast as you can just to stay in the same place, and the system is making sure you never quite catch up. Meanwhile, consider someone who took that same $50,000 and invested it in a diversified portfolio of assets, like a low-cost index fund. History shows that over the long term, Those assets tend to grow at a rate that outpaces inflation significantly. Even in volatile years, owning a piece of the economy through stocks or real estate provides a hedge that cash simply cannot offer. One person is building a bridge to wealth, while the other is standing on a sandcastle as the tide comes in. The reason the Federal Reserve cannot stop this cycle is because the entire economy is now addicted to cheap money. Every time they try to step back and let the market work on its own, something starts to break. We saw this in 2018, when the market had a total meltdown the moment they tried to raise rates. We saw it in 2022, when several major banks collapsed the moment liquidity started to dry up. The Federal Reserve is trapped in a room with no doors. They have to keep the money flowing to prevent a total systemic collapse. But that money flow creates the very distortions that make our lives so expensive. They are prioritizing financial stability over economic fairness. They would rather see your grocery bill go up by 20% than see the stock market go down by 20%. Once you understand this fundamental truth, you can stop being a victim of the system and start being a student of it. You cannot change what the Federal Reserve does in Washington, but you can change what you do with your own capital. The first step is to stop treating cash like it is a safe harbor. In the world of 2026, cash is a depreciating asset. It is a melting ice cube in your hand. You need enough cash for an emergency fund and for your immediate expenses, but anything beyond that is being taxed away by the hidden hand of inflation every single day. The second step is to begin shifting your mindset toward owning productive assets. I am not talking about gambling on the latest hot stock tip or buying into a complex investment scheme. I am talking about simple, time-tested strategies like low-cost index funds that track the top 500 companies in America. When you own an index fund, you own a piece of the companies that are raising their prices to cover inflation. If the price of soda goes up, the company making that soda earns more, and as a shareholder, you benefit from that growth. You are effectively moving to the top line of that K-shaped recovery. I know that the idea of the market can be scary, especially for those who have worked hard for every penny they have. We have all heard stories of people losing everything in a market crash. But if you look at the historical data, the biggest risk is not being in the market, it is being out of it. The S&P 500 has never had a negative return over any 20-year period in history. It requires patience, discipline, and the ability to ignore the daily noise of the news cycle. The system wants you to be afraid so that you keep your money in the bank where they can use it to lend to others. They want you to stay on that bottom line of the K so that they can maintain the status quo. But you have the power to opt out of that path. Think about a person we will call Dave. Dave is in his early 50s and has worked as a manager for 2 decades. He has always been responsible and has saved $100,000 in his savings account. He feels safe because he can see that big number every time he logs into his bank. But Dave is not realizing that 5 years ago, that $100,000 could buy a very nice house in his neighborhood. Today, it is barely enough for a down payment on a much smaller home. Dave is doing everything right, according to the old rules. But the rules changed while he was not looking. Now, think about Sarah. Sarah has the same income as Dave, but she understood the game of asset inflation. She kept only what she needed for emergencies in the bank and put the rest into a simple, total market index fund. Her account value fluctuates, and sometimes it goes down, which makes her nervous. But over the last several years, her wealth has grown far beyond the rate of inflation. She is not just saving money, she is growing wealth that will support her for decades. The difference between Dave and Sarah is not intelligence or hard work. It is simply a difference in understanding the mechanics of the system we live in. As we look toward the rest of 2026, the signals are becoming very clear. The Federal Reserve has already signaled that they are moving back toward a posture of expansion. They are buying bills. They are stopping the drain of the bathtub, and the political pressure to cut rates is only going to intensify as we get closer to the change in leadership in May. This means that more money will be entering the system, asset prices will likely continue to move higher, and the cost of living will remain under upward pressure. You have a choice to make right now. You can continue to hold on to the old idea that cash is the only way to be safe, or you can adapt to the reality of the 2026 economy. Start by educating yourself on the basics of diversified investing. You do not need a finance degree to understand an index fund. You do not need to be a millionaire to start. You can start with as little as $20 or $50 a week. The key is consistency and time. If you start today, you are giving your future self a chance to live with dignity and independence. If you wait, you are allowing the system to continue taking a silent cut of your life's work every single day. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you why we share this information. The world of finance is intentionally made to seem complicated, so that you feel like you need an expensive advisor to tell you what to do. But the most effective strategies are often the simplest ones. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference in productive assets, and stay the course for the long term. That is how real wealth is built and protected in an era of constant currency devaluation. There are millions of people out there who are feeling the squeeze of this economy, but do not understand why it is happening. Your share could be the spark that helps them take control of their financial destiny. And do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss our future updates on how to navigate this great money reset of 2026. I also want to encourage you to leave a comment below. What is the biggest challenge you are facing in this economy right now? Are you worried about inflation? Or are you more concerned about the stability of the banks? We read every comment, and your feedback helps us decide what topics to cover next. Remember, the system is rigged. But it is rigged in a way that is predictable once you know what to look for. Do not be discouraged by the headlines. Be motivated to take action. You have worked too hard for your money to let it simply vanish into the pockets of the banking system. The faucet is opening again, and the water is starting to rise. Make sure you have your boat ready. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourselves, stay vigilant, and I will see you in the next video. God bless you and your family on your journey to financial peace.